So yesterday I had a couple of problems. One was Kim couldn't hear me, so the sound got turned way up. Then it turned out I had to turn it on. So then when it did get turned on, it was like really loud. It's still a little bit loud, but we're gonna live with that. Then the other one was came in for a demonstration and I couldn't find my blowing glasses. I need to wear my blowing glasses. So I go and look for my blowing glasses, run all over the place. Anyway, this one's going to be a flask. We made one of these yesterday, and it'll be out, so you can take a look at it after the demo if you want to see what this one looks like. Because you don't get to see this one in a cold state; you only get to see it in a hot state. It's going to be an image that relates to a leaf. So we're going to use a little bit of blue glass in it, some white glass. Most of what you see will be green glass. The whole thing will be in a leaf or a petal-like shape, a flattened form, with two loops and two decorative bits at the top end so you can wear it like a glass canteen. Though most people will actually use them as hanging bases. I'm going to start it off with a tiny bit of blue glass from this harness. This blue glass is made from all of the scrap glass that happens during the process of making pieces. You always end up with extra, there's glass left on the tools that cleans off the inside of these buckets. We'll take that glass and clean it, sort it, and add a colorant to it, put it back into the furnace, and turn it into this glass. We only use it twice though. We use it once from the clear furnace and then once from the color furnace. So we know that this blue is in its second life already. Glass doesn't stay the same when it's in the furnace. When you put the raw materials in, you're putting in 100 pounds or so. In the case of our furnace, it'd be more like 250 pounds. But let's say it's a 100-pound furnace. You put in 100 pounds of raw materials, that's silicon dioxide, soda ash, lime, dolomite, fluorspar, feldspar, uridium, barium, arsenic, and manganese raw theorize. You put that 100 pounds in, and what you're going to get out of the furnace is about 70 pounds of glass. That means that 30 pounds of the raw material is going away into the atmosphere as gases. Harmless gases, but gases. And what that means is that within that environment, that hot environment, all of those various things that I mentioned are breaking down. They are no longer themselves. They completely break down and they become the glass. The glass isn't melted, the raw materials are melted. The raw materials become the glass at that point. And it's already in a liquid state. And as long as it's in that hot environment and it's liquid, it's continuing to go through chemical changes. And because it's the kind of material that will break other materials down and absorb them, it's eating the crucible away, it's eating the furnace away. So it's absorbing things from the furnace, it's absorbing things from the atmosphere, it's continuously changing in its chemical nature, and it has a limited lifespan where it's a good luxury blowing glass, which is what we're looking for. I've got maybe after about 4.5 days, you would really start to notice a difference in how the glass worked, how you could manipulate it. So we kind of try to hold it to that lifespan because of the kinds of objects we're trying to make. Glass itself isn't a pollutant, though, so you don't have to worry about glass being left in the environment. It's about as inert as you can get. One of the least changeable materials that's out there. If you look around the floor of our archaeological treasure trove here, you see little bits and pieces of glass everywhere. They don't do anything to the ground. They don't dissolve and absorb in or pollute anything. The only reason that you want to reuse material like glass is to reduce the amount of material that you have to mine in order to produce it in the first place. And I'll go on a real tangent and say the way we do it now is really silly. The way we used to recycle glass was not by recycling it, but by reusing it, by washing it and filling it back up again. And that makes a lot of sense because you don't have to go very hot to wash out a glass vessel. But if you want to take that same vessel and smash it and add it 50-50 with raw materials to make it be workable glass again, you then have to take it up to around 2,400 degrees to turn it right back into the mayonnaise bottle that it once was, or the beer bottle, whatever it happens to be. All right, so I got a layer of clear over the blue. I rolled through white glass, small particle size, white glass, slightly larger particle size, transparent green over there, then opaque green twice, and then transparent green again on the outside. 3 different greens, and that's because if you look at the trees back there, you don't see one color of green, you see many colors of green. So we're trying to get this to be a little bit like you would be looking at a forest full of leaves, and then have the whole thing be an image that relates to a leaf. So one of the other things that leaves have is they typically have a ridge that runs down the center of the leaf, and then little ridges that run out from the center. Depends on the type of leaf, of course. So we're going to add those to this by running a line of blue glass down the outside of the body. We'll do that now. Chris is going to get a gather of blue glass from the furnace. She's going to meet me over here. This is a marver, the metal table. We have 2 sets of wheels here, bearings, and they're set up cocked on an angle. As you adjust the angle, you adjust how much the pipe is going to be driven in a direction. So we have it set up so that we can run this spiral line down the body. If you look at the ornaments that we make later, you'll notice that a lot of them have dot patterns on them. We use that threader when we're making those. To get the dots, we would first push the piece into one of these ribbed metal molds, put a rib on the outside of the glass, then run the thread down, and then when you reheat, the thread pops where it's not touching the rib, and it leaves you with a series of dots running down the body of the piece. Here I want to create that leaf pattern, so I'm going to use a tool with a hook in it and drag it over the surface of the glass from the top to the bottom. I'm going to do that once on each side. And then we'll try to be careful to make those be the 2 faces of the flask. People have been using this decorative technique since the time of King Tut. It was developed in glass, not in cake decoration. So you'll see chevrons like that in ancient pieces of glass. patterns that I formed with my little hook tool. And I've got the point where they came together. I'm going to cut that off, but not quite yet. I want to start a jack mark near the tip of the pipe, just off the tip of the pipe, and then pull against the body to stretch out a neck. At the top end. Usually when we're in demonstration, if we make a mistake in terms of size, it's that I make an object too large. This time I actually got too little glass. This is going to be a relatively small flask, which is fine. I'd like to do a larger piece when people are 40 feet away trying to watch what's happening. And normally when we make a flask, we would take this immediately to the marber at this heat and sandwich it in between the metal of the marber and a wet wooden tool. But here, because I can't really see the spots that I did the holes very well. When the glass is this temperature, the color is so distorted that I started with the wet newspaper at the bench. So now I have an idea where those two marks are. They're not going to come out centered on the two walls. I didn't put them directly opposite one another. So they'll be a little offline. That's okay. They're like that on a real leaf too. When we do this, Chris is pressing and squeezing the form into shape. I have to keep the end of the tool capped. There's no valve in the pipe. The air is free to come and go. So if you don't cap the end, when she squeezes down, you would end up squeezing the two walls together in the center, collapse in the center and make contact. So we're almost ready to take this off of the blow pipe, add a little pad of glass to the end of this. This will be ground off later on. After the piece cools down. In fact, we just did that on the piece that we made yesterday. Right before the demonstration, I was in our grinding area. You have two shops when you're a glass maker. You have the hot shop, and then you have a cold shop. The cold shop is where you have your grinding and polishing equipment. So before the demonstration, I was finishing the piece from yesterday. I spent as much time grinding the little nub off and polishing it and signing the piece as we're spending making this. So it's another aspect of the work that you don't see. No one is interested in watching you grind that little nub of glass off of the body. All right, we're going to transfer off of the blow pipe now onto the rod that Chris has. That's called a punchy rod. Attach that to a little wadded clear with the base. And then once the temperature of that settles just a little bit, it will crack loose. You want the attachment to be weak, because you eventually have to break loose there. When you go to break the body of the glass, which you do twice while you're making it, you're trying to get a controlled break. And that means that the area that's breaking has to be the weakest point in the piece. piece. When I wrap on this rod and crack that loose, if it's weaker somewhere else, that's where it's going to break. So sometimes you go to crack loose and it's weaker at the punty than it is at the neck, and then the piece falls off in between. This one I got an uneven crack. I got a real saddle in the crack box there. So I'll need to trim the high spot off before we open the mouth. And it'll be a little shorter in the neck than it otherwise would have been. So the next time you break it, ideally the next time you break it, is when you are breaking loose from the punty. Chris was trying to warn me about the top end closing. Because when you reheat, you get that glass hot enough, it does one of the things that liquids do. Liquids will flow, of course, if there's a big enough mass of the liquid. But liquids will also bead up. And when you reheat, the glass beads on itself, so that it really becomes thicker. The rim on this one almost completely closed before we had a chance to get in there and bring it open. All right, now we're ready for the little loops. And I know this doesn't look green to you, it doesn't look anything like deep light colors. That's because the color is distorted by the heat. The piece is still probably around 1400 degrees or so on the surface, and it's hotter than that beneath the surface. So the color is distorted by the temperature. Chris gets each gather on a separate rod because, whoops, that's what I was saying before. Hi there. Got it. Okay, do it. This one might possibly be one that we can save. It felt like a good time when the body was pretty warm and when the loop was already on and shaped. I don't think the loop got mangled. The body didn't break. Got it back to the heat. It is much more likely to. Thank you. That's the result of dropping lots of pieces over time. You learn that sometimes you can get away with picking them up. So we'll see what happens with this one. I don't think it's going to show any sign of damage. The problem is when we go to crack loose, it's much more likely to break at the bottom end of the flask. All right, so I was saying she gets them on a different rod each time. That's because you want it to come with the same amount and the same consistency. So ideally you can make these parts match up. The last two bits are both decorative and semi-functional. Their function isn't one that is in terms of your use of the flask. Their function is to make the loops and the body stronger at the lower end of the loop. When you put the loops on, you're putting the top end of the loop hot to the body, and then you're using tweezers to turn it over, and that lower end attachment happens in a cooler state. So the glass doesn't have a chance to flow together quite as much there. When you put these bits on, you're putting them on hot to both surfaces, both to the bottom end of the loop and to the body. It's like adding a dollop of adhesive there. Right, that one is all done. That's the finished flask, and I know you can't. Thank you. I know you can't see the colors. All right, big difference in color. This one needs to go into this oven, and I'm going to wait just a little extra on this because we put that one in yesterday, and some of the fiber wanted to adhere to it. Also, I'm going to break loose, instead of trying to break loose in the middle of the mass, which is what I would have done had it not fallen off, I'm going to try to break loose at the top end of that little pad that we put on. I'm going to grab it with my gloved hand. It's still over 1,200 degrees. Came off just fine. Let me put that in here. Thank you. Everything we make has to go into that oven. The oven runs at 960 degrees. This glass, that's called its set point. That's the temperature that it's not moving at any longer as it comes down. It is the same as glass is at 75 degrees. It's not moving any more at 960 than it is at 75. But it does expand and contract between those two temperatures. If you bring it up slowly, it can expand as much as you want. If you bring it down slowly, it can contract as much as you want. But if you pour hot coffee into one of our mugs, you're going to make the inside surface expand while the outside is still contracted, and that's going to break the mug. Coming down, if you bring it down too quickly, the outside is going to compress and break the piece. If you bring it down at the right rate of speed, you're going to do it incrementally so that all of the glass cools down at the same rate, and that leaves it stress-free and unbroken. So if you want to see that particular flask, you're going to have to be back next Saturday at 10. If you don't want to wait that long, you can look at the one we already finished or look at the rest of the work back there. It might be a little crowded right now, so you might want to come back in 15 or 20 minutes. If you have questions, stay and ask. Otherwise, have a great life, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. And next time you come, we'll do something bigger. That one was a little on the teeny side. I'm sorry about that.